Welcome to Michigan's Great Beer State Podcast, brought to you by the Michigan Brewers Guild, celebrating 25 years of camaraderie. The Great Beer State Podcast shares the stories of our member breweries and the rich community of Michigan beer and brewing. Listen in, have a beer, and then check out mibeer.com for a full listing of member breweries, events, and more opportunities to explore and support the Great Beer State. Welcome to Michigan's Great Beer State Podcast. I'm Fred here with Scott, bringing you another episode talking to the community of breweries, brewers, and beer lovers in this great state of Michigan. Scott, how are things?
Things are good. It feels like it's been a very busy summer, kind of leading into fall. The festivals kind of pile up, but it's been great to be back at full schedule of beer festivals. So we had a great summer beer festival in July in Ypsilanti, and we had a really nice UP Fall Beer Festival, although it rained on us a little bit most of the day. Everybody had a really great time and a good attitude, and for the most part just ignored the rain. And we're deep into getting ready to have the Detroit Fall Beer Festival in Detroit on October 22nd, which probably by the time some folks look at this, it'll be just happening or just passed.
Yeah, and it's exciting. October 22nd happens to mark the day in 1997, that fateful day, which if you've been listening to these interviews and read Rising Tide, you know that we were called together, invited by Rex and Mary Halfpenny to come together as a community and start talking about whether we should have a more formal relationship as a statewide collection of breweries seeking to promote and protect our industry. And so that gathering was October 22nd, 1997. I think we officially became an organization in December of that year, and our first summer beer festival was the following July. So a historic day to be holding a Detroit Fall Beer Festival, and it'll be culminating a lot of our 25th anniversary celebrations as well. So we hope people come out for that.
Yeah, it's quite a coincidence, but like you said, it kind of marks a interesting point in time in our 25-year history, and it's been fun celebrating the 25th anniversary this year. I think there were a lot of collaboration beers that folks had at their breweries and at the Summer Beer Festival, which was one of the fun things. We had a neat glassware program. This was our second year of doing that, and that's been fun. Hopefully somebody have collected all 2 different versions now. But yeah, looking at wrapping up, and of course we've got the documentary that members are hosting viewing parties, and it will continue to be available after we get through the initial viewing parties. We invite anybody to watch it at all. So look to one of your local breweries, ask them about the Great Beer State documentary celebrating 25 years. If they haven't scheduled it, it's pretty easy, and we encourage them to do so.
Yeah, and if you go to the 25th anniversary page at mibeer.com, you'll see a schedule there. There's about 10 or more viewing parties up right now. And as you mentioned, it's pretty straightforward for a brewery, a supporter, your local library, your local art center, your local tavern, anybody that wants to come together and check out the history and sort of storyline of the Michigan Brewers Guild can host a viewing party. So no cost, no barrier, just sign up and share it with your community. Or look for one that's already hosting and you can go check it out. So that's our plug there. I think today we'll get into our interview introduction in a second after Brewers Dozen, but I find it interesting that in that conversation it's fun to feature a younger brewery, younger member of the industry, and hear a perspective that's come in more modern times, let's say. So that's a nice yin and yang of doing this project, is hearing different points of view from our timeline and experience. But first, a brewer's dozen. We'll go through, we're in one of our circuits where we're going alphabetically, and we're into the G's and H's of taking a stroll through the membership roles of the Michigan Brewers Guild as a way to share who they are with you and encourage you to go visit and check out their beer. You want to kick us off?
Yeah, let's start in Ann Arbor at Grizzly Peak Brewing Company, longtime member of the Michigan Brewers Guild.
Yeah, and then we've got board member, committee chair of DE&I community, or committee, pardon me, Guardian Brewing Company in Saugatuck, neighbor of mine.
Yeah, Gull Lake Distilling Company is also a brewery, and that's in Galesburg in the greater Kalamazoo area.
And then we've got Hand Map Brewing Company in Battle Creek. I don't know how to do this on Zoom, so it'll point, but they're right about over there.
Harbor Light Brewery is in South Haven.
We've got Harmony Brewing Company in Grand Rapids.
And Harmony Hall, which is an extension of Harmony, also in Grand Rapids.
Another longtime member, I remember many board meetings that we used to hold at Harper's Restaurant and Brew Pub in East Lansing.
And Heartland Brewing Company is in Howell.
And we've got Hereford and Hops, one of the early entries in the UP in Escanaba.
And in Oxford, we have Homegrown Brewing Company.
And we've got Holmes Brewery in Ann Arbor.
And Holmes' second location, also in Ann Arbor, is called Holmes Campus, and that wraps up our Brewer's Dozen for today. Makes you thirsty, makes you want to go have a beer at those places.
Absolutely. We've got Adam from Ascension Brewing Company coming up here, an interview that we did last Fall Beer Festival in Detroit. And I thought it was interesting to talk to Adam. We didn't know each other, so I think you ahead of time. And I like the mix and match of those different types of interviews, because there's a certain different type of curiosity. When you're learning about the brewery, you're learning about the person, you're learning about their story. And that's part of my take listening back to this interview, is that's an important exercise for all of us to do, is to keep listening to stories we don't know yet versus just connecting to the people that we know, that we came up with, the beer, the brewery that we've always known is comfortable. And I like visiting and listening and hearing from new voices.
Yeah, I agree. And I like to focus on that as well, because a huge part of our community is people that haven't been around for 10 or 20 years, that have opened in the last 5 or 6 or even 1 or 2 years. They're an important part of the growth of the industry and what's happening, and they're an important part of the future of the industry. So it was fun to get to know a little bit more about Ascension Brewing Company. And we've been talking a lot about community and what that means to our industry. And I found it really interesting that is one of the things that drew Adam and his wife to want to open their business. And it continues to be a driving focus for them as they look at their guests and their employees both, really trying to have community make a difference in people's lives and see people do well.
Yeah, and I think that he talked about Novi in that community, and you think in the year that they opened, that we've already got a few hundred breweries in the state, and it's not a small town, so it may evade that thought of new communities getting their first brewery, and yet they're not the first brewery in that specific sort of city, but on the other hand, their inspiration is similar to an often told arc, which is our community was starving for something small and independent and creative and a gathering place, and we wanted to give it to them. And I don't know the exact history of Novi in that surrounding area, but it made a lot of sense to me when you think about the type of businesses that are in that area. There's a lot of big box stores, and that they saw a need and they're going to answer it. And that is an old story brought in a new time.
Yeah, to be sure. And for those of you who are wondering what the local scene might look like, you may have heard of or remember Local Color Brewing Company that was in
Yeah.
Novi, and it was it was a fairly elaborate, bigger brewery with quite a tasting room, restaurant hospitality atmosphere. But they've been gone for quite a few years now, so it's great to see a small husband and wife kind of family operation open with a focus on community.
Yeah, and so we hear that story, and we hear the story of making it through, and what it was like to enter into the COVID pandemic as a young organization, and I think that's compelling, an important story to hear as well. So that's our guest. I don't know if we have anything else other than it was great.
I've got one other comment that I thought about in listening to Adam in the interview, and he talked about the Michigan Brewers Guild beer festivals and how he sees them, and he sees them all kind of uniquely different. But one of the things he mentioned was it's an opportunity for him to see other people from breweries and other owners, other brewers, and a chance to get together with them, which I think is really a favorite part for so many of us, regardless of our tenure in the industry. And it's something that makes our festivals kind of unique. And I like to point it out because not everybody knows it, but our festivals support the Michigan Brewers Guild, which is a nonprofit trade association. And the brewers are generous with their time and energy. They come and do these festivals. It's common to see a lot of owners, managers, brewers at the events. You can talk to them. They're approachable. They're usually there enjoying their time with friends new and old. And I think that's a unique and special part of our events.
Absolutely. And I think it's another one of those stories that now, 25 years in, it's easy to think of these festivals as this established thing, and you don't really think about where it goes or who's at the helm, and how it's different maybe from other festivals. And this may be veering off a little bit from where it started with Adam's discussion, but I do think it's important to remember how essential those gatherings are, not only to our culture and community, but they're directly providing funds to promote and support the industry cumulatively, collectively, collaboratively. So all those brewers that are putting in that time are not only showcasing their products, they're raising money to support the industry and the guild, which is essential.
Yeah.
So shout out to everybody that makes that happen, and volunteers their time at breweries, and the volunteers that help run the festival. And I think that's great sentiment to think about here as we wrap up the first complete festival season in a few years. That doesn't come from nowhere. There's a lot of people working hard to make it happen. And thanks, Adam, for sitting down with us and sharing your enthusiasm. So here's Adam, Ascension Brewing in Novi.
Yeah. Cheers to Adam and Heather and the whole team at Ascension Brewing.
Welcome, Adam. Nice to meet you.
You too.
So we are trading stories, telling stories, learning about the breweries that make up this great community here in Michigan. And I'd love it if you could just start and talk a little bit about when did your first intersection with beer or brewing happen?
Yeah, long time ago for me personally, but we started because my wife and I had a totally unrelated business, and I homebrewed beer in the wintertime as just a hobby activity, just something I did in my downtime. And as we started thinking as we got older about having kids, we didn't really think our current activity was going to be viable long term, and Just it was a matter of deciding like what are we passionate about. We love people, we love business. Craft beer is a lot of fun. We love going to breweries when we travel, and that's kind of where Ascension started. Was just there was a need in the community. There wasn't anything currently there. Now most of the towns around us 6 years later have 1 or 2 breweries at least, and the community has just grown tremendously.
Tell me a little bit about your community and what brought you to open what brought you there, or what brought the brewery there?
Ascension's located in Novi. That's where I live. Now, Novi, if you're not from that area, is very commercial, like a lot of big box stores, really hit or miss, though, for mom and pop places. And there was no good brewery anywhere within 10 miles of us when we opened. Now there are tons of places within 10 miles of us, which was great. But yeah, our community was really desperate for something like that. Everybody who lived near us had to go 15, 20 minutes minimum somewhere else to have that experience. And we just thought it'd be amazing if we could open up something that was close to home, good for family life, and something that we're passionate about.
And you opened in 2015, is that right?
Yep, we opened in July 2015, and now we're in fall of 2021, I guess a little over 6 years later.
Yeah. So when you say you kind of saw, or what I heard anyways, was you talking about a need that you saw for the community in a place that you thought would really fit in well. Can you tell me a little bit about what that vision was and kind of what were the hallmarks of your idea in creating Ascension?
Well, when I say we, I mean my wife and I, Heather. She runs the business with me, although she's mostly behind the scenes. But our former job was photography, so we traveled a lot to do that work. And in that work, we stayed at a lot of hotels and found ourselves eating out quite a bit. And the breweries were always the places we felt the most comfortable. And it was, I think, a combination of like the great product, like we like food that tastes awesome and beer that's great. And the people at the breweries that we always went to were just super down to earth, really friendly. And that was what, I didn't know exactly how that would look for me in our business, but I just knew that that's something that I wanted, and I would do anything I could to try to create it.
Nice. And what do you think came out of that process? So from idea to getting the doors open, what do you think from that original idea showed up the most in that's present today?
I think one of the things that I've always really said that I wanted with Ascension is that I wanted there to be people who ran this place that really cared about what we were doing. And I think that is the biggest mark we're leaving on our community, is that the obvious care of the product and of the brand is there. And customers notice that. They notice when you remember their name or what they like to eat or drink. It's nice to be known when you go into a place. Like, the world's really big. I think most of us are honestly just looking for a way to maybe shrink that a little bit. And breweries are a great place for this. Like, they're kind of a common ground meeting place for everybody. It doesn't matter where you come from, what you believe. Everybody here is under the same roof drinking that same beer. So that's kind of where the common ground is found there.
Yeah, nice. And what was the reception like? So I don't know how long it took you to go from maybe let's back up for a second. So what was the process and the timeline like from, hey, let's do this, let's change our careers, let's go for it. How long from then until you're serving beer to somebody?
So I homebrewed probably for about 8 years, maybe a little less than 8 years. And during that time when we would go and visit other breweries, like I always said to my wife, this is something that we're going to do someday, you know that, right? And she would always just kind of dismiss it a little bit, but I think in her heart she sort of knew that was kind of our future as well. So
about the 100th time maybe.
Yeah, when I approached her seriously about it, because everything's got to be cool with the whole family, not just me.
Yeah.
She was really supportive of the idea, I think, and wanted to make sure that we had a good plan together, and that it was a viable long-term option, not just something I think it's a real disservice to the community when people are just in it for a quick buck or whatever they think that looks like. I don't know, but our motivation was to create something that lasts and something that is here and improves the lives of the people who pass through that venue, whether you work for me or whether you just visit. I just want it to be a place, even with the name Ascension, like we want the undertone there to be like pulling people up from wherever it is you came from. Like, if you've got stuff going on and there's someone here who can help you, like, awesome. We're a bunch of screwed up people really at the end of the day, but we work together, and I think that's also common ground for us as staff, knowing that our mission is to provide the best possible experience for anybody who comes in, no matter where they're at in life.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm wondering about sort of the reception. So you're opening. There's probably that you're in a sea of big box stores, like you said.
Right.
So this idea of bringing something forward that's small and independent.
There was a lot of pent-up demand for our place when we opened. It's when we opened, we ended up calling it kind of like a soft launch, but really our intent was to stay open the whole time. But we were open for about a week. We sold completely out of beer and had to close for 2 weeks before anything was ready to serve again. So that was kind of a shock to me. I mean, I thought it would probably go okay and decently well, but had no idea that was kind of what the flow was going to look like. So we had to retool everything almost immediately to be able to handle that. And that's kind of been the story of our brewery, I guess. Like we're very small, so just trying to become maybe like a little bit less small in the process. But when everything is built around what you expected back then, we're kind of playing catch up and always trying to reconfigure something or invent new ways of skinning the cat, as they say. I guess maybe that's not cool to say on video, but the basic idea is like it's evolving all the time.
Yeah. And tell me about sort of choosing business model in terms of, the difference between micro and a brew pub. How did that conversation go, and what did you, how did you decide which model to go with in that neighborhood?
Well, I don't come from the beer industry, and I don't really have a whole lot of experience in the distribution and some of the larger scale operations related to brewing. So I've learned bits and pieces of those, but I knew that if we were going to do this, that wasn't me. That wasn't what we know. It's not our skill set. What I'm really good at is talking to people. Like I'm better with one-on-one conversations than talking to 100 people in a room.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to do that very much. So I think it made the most sense that we would build something that was impactful in our community and would make a lasting imprint, hopefully on their lives and my family's life here also.
Nice. And tell me a little bit about, you've mentioned already that you've seen a lot of breweries open around your area since then, even though it's short 6 years. What was your vantage point or viewpoint of the industry, the community of Michigan breweries, and how has that changed now that you are a member of that community?
It was more or less what I expected, I guess, from an overall community standpoint. There are some real big ones, and there's some really little ones, and then kind of everybody else in between. But everywhere you go, like you find people who are very similar. Like we all sort of want the same thing. We want happiness in our work. We spend the majority of our lives. We want to work around people that we're cool with in an industry that we feel like we're contributing to. And breweries tend, especially the smaller ones, like breweries really give that vibe off, and it's great for a lot of people because when they show up to work, they're doing something that makes a really big difference in the company overall. Like we're not just talking like a difference for one person, but because of the work that you do, all of these other people, their job works and the customers like it and you have a hand in that. And I think if we've got a place that people get some recognition for some of that, like that's awesome. I can never deal out enough of it, honestly. Like the people that we have are tremendous, and our staff have got a pretty good long track record. We have a lot of people who have been at our company now for a long time and are really committed to what we're doing, but not also with the blinders on, still kind of looking at what's evolving and changing in our business. And I really can't buy that. It's just something that has developed over time, and it's really a great thing.
What do you think is well, let me start with, so you're a young business, you've got this idea off the ground, things are rolling, and a worldwide pandemic hits. How did you navigate through COVID and the shutdowns, and what did that look like for your team and brewery?
We were all caught off guard in our entire industry. I think there was no precedent for anything. There was no game plan for anybody. We had to come up with stuff quickly and on the fly, or else we weren't going to make it. So in our case, we already package a lot of our beer that we do sell mostly in our tap room through can sales and to-go fills and things like that. But the cans were really what saved us. And we're so grateful, and having that community and like that being a goal of ours to try to establish that. They really rallied around us during the pandemic where everything was closed. We would do online beer sales and people would come up for the curbside pickups, and there'd be 2 lanes and they'd be all the way out on Grand River blocking traffic. And just to see that kind of an outpouring like was really pretty touching, honestly, for Heather and I. And we don't know what we're going to do. You know, we got 2 kids at home and we got a mortgage and all the expenses that people have. And we're thinking like, how could we have put this much work into this and something like is going to maybe just disintegrate it like right out from underneath of us, and there's nothing we can do. And our staff wouldn't let it happen. So we took action. People showed up. We did the work, and we made it. So honestly, I feel like anybody in our industry who made it through that right now deserves a big pat on the back, because the challenges were pretty real, and they're ongoing. Supply chain issues, price increases, labor shortages. You know, you keep hearing it, but I really believe if we, as an industry, kind of like rally behind the principles that we founded most of our own places on, that stuff will work itself out.
Yeah, and I know you kind of stated it earlier, but share a little bit about what are those principles? What do you think is the common principles in our industry?
I think valuing people for who they are, not what they contribute to your business in a monetary sense, is probably the number one thing for me personally. I think everybody probably doesn't share that view, but I would like to think that I look at people and for their value as human beings, and you have something to contribut here. And you know, when you're hired at our place, like we want to see that thrive. If you're good at something, let's expose that. Let's get legs to that idea. And so I think that's part of our success is honestly just giving our staff the freedom to be good at what they're good at, and get them resources to achieve a goal that they've got or an objective, or try to produce a new product with our brewers. So that's what keeps people interested. It's people that you already recognize because you've seen them for the last 3 or 4 years as you walk in that tap room, and now they have something that they want to show you. They're exciting, you know.
Yeah.
It's a fun environment to be around.
Yeah. How does that show up in your beers and food, and like what are the signatures of what you offer to people from a product point of view? From this point in our history, I'm sure I'll have a different answer probably in 5 years from now, because our products are always changing. We have a lot of things that we've done pretty well, some things that we can improve on, just like everybody, and we have stuff that we're passionate about. So our biggest goal is honestly trying to find out where those things are, where that intersection is. So typically on our tap list, you'll find a couple lagers, some stouts, sours, IPAs, a lot of the things that you find in I guess maybe some of the newer breweries, but also some traditional stuff. So what's really separated us from some of the others around us is that we've done kind of a wide variety of styles, I think, pretty decently well. More recently too, our guys have dived pretty deep off the lager deep end, which is exciting to me because that's everyday beer that I like to drink. I love a lot of the flashy stuff, the sours and the IPAs and the stouts and all that, but also I love something that's great that I can drink on a boat. Mm-hmm. So having a real wide variety has been, I think, pretty critical to our taproom experience, because that's where most of the people try our product. And looking around and looking ahead, now that we're sort of at least moved through one sort of, or a couple of phases of this unprecedented time, what do you think is important for a healthy brewing industry to continue in Michigan?
Ooh, good question. Healthy business practices in beer nowadays. I think one of the best things we can do as breweries to support our teams is to treat them like human beings and help them realize their own passions. And that looks different. There is not a one-size-fits-all model that works this way. And this is a lot more difficult the bigger you get, I would imagine. So we have a little over, I think, 22, 23 people now maybe. So not a very big company, but everyone needs to be able to have a voice. And you know, if that's not something you care about, that's fine. But if you do have something that's a passion project, we want to hear about it. So really, number one thing, honestly, just people. Create a work environment that's fun to go to.
Yeah.
Our staff have a lot of flexibility. Almost everyone there is empowered to make choices the way I would make them. And we typically are not too concerned with blowback or consequences, and they've all earned that right. So I know that when I'm not there, our place is in really good hands by people who care.
Great. Tell me a little bit about the festival experience. So, you know, you're really serving your community and have a very localized relationship in a normal day. And now you bring your beer out to, you know, we're here at Detroit Beer Festival. What's it like to bring your beers out and meet the people at a Brewers Guild festival?
This Detroit festival that we're at right now kind of feels like our own backyard. So this is one of the fun ones for us. We love all of them. They're great. They're really well attended. They're well run. And tons of our brewer friends also get to come to them. So for us, that's great because we all work a lot. And some of the people that we're friends with don't really live within a day's drive of us. So these festivals are a great opportunity on one hand for the brewers to get to see some of their friends. But for us, we get to see the general populace. And it's a great way to get a lot of feedback on some cool stuff that you want to try in a short amount of time. And people will stand there right there and drink it. I mean, it doesn't get as good a feedback as that really anywhere else other than in the tap room.
Yeah.
So tough to do that, but we really do go there because we like getting out and interfacing with the people who are drinking our beer and just seeing what they think about it, trying new stuff. And occasionally we get people that come to our tap room in Novi, at least, you know, at this point, that's not common everywhere we go to these festivals. You know, some of them are pretty far away, but
Yeah.
Just today, we had probably a couple of dozen of our members come through our line and just say hi, and you know, it sort of feels like a little bit of a family reunion at some point, to, you know. But I do enjoy it. You know, I've gone to, how many of these things are there a year? 3, 4 now. I mean, it's other than obviously in the last year, but
Yeah.
you know, some people I've met have kind of taken the approach of like, well, if you've been to one, you've been to all. I don't really think that's true, but you got to kind of realize, like, I'm not coming at it from that perspective. Every single time I go there are new people that we've never met, and it's another chance to get somebody in front of what you do and tell them why you think it's good.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for putting Ascension into the world, for bringing it into the world. Thanks to both you and Heather and your whole crew.
Thank you.
And love that you're part of the community, and just appreciate you sitting down with us as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, if there's any chance to give credit to anyone, I'd honestly love to give all that away to either my wife or our brew team, our front of the house, our kitchen staff, everybody who works there. Really, they're the reasons why I'm even able to come to this. So
awesome. I think we knew it was big work, but I don't think we had the range of vision to understand what it was going to look like or how much of an impact it was going to have.
I mean, State of Michigan, Travel Michigan, Pure Michigan recognizes craft beer as one of their top 10, maybe less, maybe top 5 reasons people come to Michigan. It's part of our story.
Michigan is an anomaly in the country for how powerful the guild is.
When I first started, there was probably only 8 or 10 other breweries. See, when I went to try to learn anything, there was only one other brewery in the UP, which was Hereford and Hops. And that's the only other brewer I could go talk to at the time. So it was pretty kind of limited. That first Brewfest year changed everything. Craft beer is just totally accepted as the real beer now, and I think that's awesome.
I remember thinking how good I thought this was going to be for our fledgling industry, because people didn't really see us as an industry that had staying power. We're such a mature, established industry that people take so seriously.
We have to make this a qualitative conversation. You should engage with our products because they're an enhanced experience, and that there's something to this.
Where I really got excited was, wow, this is the beginning of a whole new industry. You know, nobody's doing this.
It actually put brewers in each other's faces and to try each other's beers.
Different breweries adding 6 beers, 8 beers, 10 beers. You know, you've seen as many as 20 to 30 different beers.
To have that connection where somebody feels like, you know, I know somebody, we see it as such an opportunity to develop contacts and culture and knowledge.
Hey, look, there goes Joe Short, you know. His name's on this. I get to say hi to him. People love that.
You know, I'll ask questions and he'll tell me anything. Hey, where do you get your supplies? How long does this, what's the temperature range on this yeast? Anything from A to Z. and they answer all my questions.
I feel like we were a community of people that were really in love with what we were doing. That's what the Guild's job was. It's like this is a group of people who got together for one purpose.
For a little engine that could think, like, we pull off a hell of a party, 4 times a year for a lot of people. And I'm very proud of the show that we put on.
It just reaches out, it just spread out, and it touched everybody. And it became a cool thing to do.
Congratulations on 25 wonderful years. We're going to keep growing, and here's to the next 25.